No difficulty with what you stated about the other issues. I think on, our Bill of Rights and the equality agenda. These are things that I totally hid them with you on, that we should be implementing. But we want to get ourselves into a positive frame of mind where the last thing that we should do, Chairman, is be seen in Europe that we're in any way, arguing ourselves on the island of Ireland. I mean, the best way of us getting the best deal for us, including whether that gets a special status, whatever falls out of that, whatever way we negotiate it, whether it's called special status or for whatever vehicle it comes in negotiation. I think it's by us working together. It's by Stormont working. It's by very active meetings of the North-South Ministerial Council, British-Irish Council, but mainly the North-South Ministerial Council, and ministers here and ministers for the future, working actively in real cohesion with ministers from the executive. I think that's what I. Yeah, we are, but but I think this is the game we should play. We shouldn't. If you know what happens when you're driving on the motorway and you look behind. It's best to drive this on.
Absolutely, but I think the point of trying to tease out today, in terms of the discussion that I've been trying to tease out in this chamber over the last few weeks, is particularly, I mean, everyone understands that the government has a position to adopt, particularly pre the triggering of Article 50. I mean, I think we all appreciate and recognise it was a difficult time for them. We have now moved beyond that. So I think in terms of any negotiation, you have to adopt a negotiation stance. And you have to set your objectives, and I think you need to move beyond plans and into action. So everything that you've said, Mr. Ahern, I agree with. I have had the privilege to represent the Short Strand in East Belfast. I know well the tensions that could come about, and that's why I asked you, did you believe Brexit was potentially a threat to the peace process? You touched, Sharon, you'll maybe indulge me for 1 minute, you touched on the North-South bodies, which I think is actually a very fine and interesting example of where there is a potential alteration, as said by the EU Affairs Committee, EU Constitutional Affairs Committee. How do you envisage, for example, Tourism Ireland as a North-South body established under Good Friday? How does Tourism Ireland, as one example, continue to promote the island of Ireland? If there is potentially a hardening of the border, there's the issue of freedom of movement and everything else. There's the Food Standards Agency, so you're going to potentially have two different arrangements around food safety, and I know that's a hypothetical situation, but here you have a potential alteration of those structural aspects of the Good Friday Agreement, which has been taken unilaterally. So I haven't necessarily adopted, because we have yet to see what way the negotiation is going to go. But here you have a very significant and influential committee at the EU Parliament saying that the Good Friday Agreement will have to be altered as a result of Brexit. So we may be too late in saying, and the Minister for Foreign Affairs was in during the week and also said, well, we hope that won't happen, but it may actually be happening as a result of Brexit. So it's a cause of great concern.
I accept that, but there's two of us here that were in a government that not only offered Tourism Ireland, but we also offered to amalgamate IDA with Invest Northern Ireland, and that was rejected. But that's nearly 20 years ago, and I think these things are still relevant. If I was in these houses today, I'd still be advocating that we should reoffer some of those things, because it is by forcing the cohesion and the cooperation that will find the solutions to actually drive it on. My fear is, and it's not applied to you, but my fear is that if we try to find difficulties and wonder how these agencies will all work in the future, then we put ourselves outside. Like the reality is, the foot and mouth case of whatever number of years or any other animal disease will show that the island of Ireland should be treated as one. So therefore you say to Barney, well, here's another reason why we want special status or whatever. And Our tourism is another one, and our industrial policy is another one. And listen, I know we think we're very important when we're huge, but in the overall figures of it, we're very small, and I think there's where we can win concessions. So all as I'm saying, I think we should look for all the positives on these issues and drive them forward. Now, in saying that, I think having a customs union that isn't some way technologically handled on the border would be a disaster, and we should be making that very, very clear. But can I conclude in this, Chairman? Jean-Claude Juncker, President of the European Commission, Michel Barnier, the chief negotiator on this issue, Guy Verhofstadt, who's a person I don't agree with in lots of things because he'd like to federalist Europe and that, but I agree with him on this. They have all said they respect and accept that Ireland suffers most. They accept that anything that's in breach of the Good Friday Agreement cannot happen, that they understand the past conflict in Ireland, and they want to be helpful. It beholds us. They have a lot of things to do. It beholds us to put the clear vision of how that becomes a reality. And as I've said this morning, I think that clear vision paper is not done over the next 2 years. I think it's done over the next 3 or 4 months.
Mr. Ahern, I want to...
Yeah, Terry, Councillor Leaden, I don't agree with you on the vetoes, by the way. I think the veto discussion, but I do think, on the other issues that you raised, and how we can use the agencies and work for an agreement are things that are doable in the negotiations. But I strongly believe in the merits of your case, and the facts of your case is what we should be arguing, and we have good, strong, coherent grounds, and I think the Brexit department, I just think my view is this should have been done last autumn. I'm not too sure we've gone on a different way. And your other questions, thank you for the flattery, but I have no control over those matters.
But I know that you would serve in the national interest. You know that.
Thank you very much, Senator Leaden. I'd like to conclude by thanking you, Mr. Ahern, for such a lengthy contribution and for covering all the many topics raised by all the committee here, and I thank all committee members for their level of engagement. We have a considerable job of work to be doing over the next coming months, so we would appreciate keeping an open ear, and if you would be of a mind to engage further, we would really appreciate that. The committee is now suspended until 2 p.m. when we return. Enjoy your lunch.